Piers Morgan has been hosting these debates recently, debate panels on his show, and we've covered some of them. This one was between liberal streamer Destiny, also on the left, Francesca Fiorentini, and on the right, you had Michael Knowles and Tommy Lauren. And really interesting moments to play for you. Destiny did a really good job of calling out some MAGA nonsense and actually calling out Piers Morgan specifically for how he's covering what he's covering. And some stuff like that. So instead of giving a big long introduction, because some of you don't like that, let me just play his first clip and then I'll have my response.
Blind allegiance to a leader, literally no matter what he does. It is the engine that powers Republicans. It allows them to lie for their leader. It allows them to excuse horrendous actions by their leader. It allows them to look at a president and for after decades of saying, oh, we need to limit the power of government. Oh, we need to limit the power, say, well, maybe the president should actually be above most criminal prosecution. Also, as a quick thing, you keep saying that, no, it's just partial immunity for official acts. What is an official act of the president? If you actually listen to the oral arguments that were presented before the Supreme Court, what that act even is and the ability to even probe for it is stuff right now that is now presumed to be immune.
Well,
for instance, just a real quick thing. When Donald Trump is asking Pence, hey, can you throw out the election because I don't like the results, which is a real thing that happened, by the way, as much as Trump's like to say that's not true, that is counted as an official action because these are the roles of the president and vice president, deciding how to count the electoral votes. That is insanity to me. If Biden were to do anything even remotely similar, Republicans would lose their minds.
Yeah, and before going further, this is referencing the Supreme Court decision that seemingly places, at least things you could call official acts, the president above the law. And that seems to fly in the face of so many of the principles that this incredible American thing was created on. Now, Patriot Takes pointed out, it seems like the SCOTUS immunity ruling violates the plain text of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 3. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office, and then it skips forward. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. And even separate from this, we don't have to go through the clips, maybe we'll go over them on the bonus show, but the Supreme Court justices who ruled this have said over and over, no one's above the law. And as we talked about, sorry for hitting the mic, with our legal expert Aaron Parnas already, the way this decision is written, seemingly so vague in how it's not really defining official acts. Then Trump's side is arguing that within that umbrella, you have things, as Destiny pointed out, like putting together fraudulent slates of electors. So a president could officially get somebody to do something that would prevent someone else from coming into office, and there's no ability to bring criminal prosecution against them. They're not subjected to the normal laws other people are. I don't know how you continue a democracy with that. And then one of the things that's been brought up a lot, and we'll talk about in a different segment, Don Jr. was pushing this, is people saying on social media, people on the left saying, so now could Biden, as was pointed out by Justice Sotomayor, could Biden direct SEAL Team 6 as an official act because he thinks it's a threat to the United States, whatever it would take to make an official act, the assassination of his political opponent, which we don't want, but it's being pointed out that if you take the text of this decision and then plug those metrics into it, would that be appropriate? Seems like it's up in the air, which it shouldn't be. And by pointing that out, now MAGA has said that the left wants Trump to be assassinated. No, we're saying that it seems the argument his team is making, not it seems, his lawyer in front of the Supreme Court before this decision was made in the oral arguments made such a case that yes, a SEAL Team 6 assassination of a political opponent directed by the president could be an official act, could be something they're immune from prosecution on. So that's insane. And the next thing Destiny points out is Piers Morgan, while it is a story and it is notable, as I alluded to earlier, Biden's post-debate political issues and the doubts about him as the nominee and all that, that's a notable story. But the fact that you're talking about that in place of the Supreme Court putting the president above the law is an indictment of your values.
I agree with that.
You agree?
I totally disagree. No, if Donald Trump is taking insane, again, the Supreme Court ruling today is unbelievable. The idea that instead on today's show we're going to focus on whether or not Biden had a bad debate performance is just reflective of the I don't want to say agenda in a negative way, but of what you want to talk about today on this program. Like, I think that the decisions that are being made right now legislatively in the Supreme Court are more important, or that are being made in the Supreme Court are more important
that's happening?
than whether or not Biden has a bad.
You know why it's happening? Because Trump was able to put 3 judges on the court in 1 term. You know why that was? Because you put up a terrible candidate, Hillary Clinton. It was incredibly polarizing, very arrogant, very superior, and she got flatlined by Trump when no one saw it coming on the Democrat side.
And secondly,
some of your Democrat judges who should have known better decided they weren't going to resign. They weren't going to retire. And because of that, Trump was able to pack that court. So I'm afraid you reap what you sow. Just very bad politics.
Okay, so separate from getting into a whole debate about sort of the underlying assumptions there from Piers Morgan, I don't understand how, if I took that at face value, even so, it would make sense. Because Destiny's not saying that this wasn't the inevitable outcome of such conservative justices being on the Supreme Court. And I agree, a lot of people didn't take the election of Hillary Clinton seriously enough and decided not to vote. So you don't got to argue with me that we should have been more successful in defeating Trump the very first time. Because there was an outcome that we didn't know for sure exactly how it would go, but it wasn't going to be good. And some people didn't get that. But that doesn't change the absurdity of the decision. The absurdity of saying without a clear definition that allows the president to be prosecuted in cases where they brazenly violate the law, like it seems Trump did, to so vaguely state that the president can be prosecuted for acts, as I'm worried will eventually be defined when this goes back up to the Supreme Court, because they put it back to the trial level. It's going to come back up, and they're going to get to define if what Trump did was an official act or not. And if they say it was, then you're saying just almost anything could be construed as such. And that is a really frightening thing. And the fact that Piers Morgan is giving the time he is to the Biden debate conversation without time to what could change fundamentally, as Justice Sotomayor in her dissent outlined very nicely, the office of the presidency does show, as Destiny said, sort of an agenda, while also understanding the importance of talking about these big stories with Biden as we're doing. And if you're interested in further discussion about the bad polling that we've seen come out, the Democrat that I mentioned that's calling on Biden to drop out, the historian who's saying it would be bad for Biden to drop out, and he's been correctly predicting presidential elections. So sort of all these different things relate to that conversation on the bonus show. I'm going to be doing a lot of discussion about that. You can get it by clicking the join button below. Here's more.
On the final point, it's easy to think that something is good because you look at only the surface level things. You go, oh, well, there were no new wars, so it must have been great. People say peace in the Middle East and forget that Iran attacked Saudi Arabia.
So let me go back. We'll start this from the beginning just to give you the context so you hear it all within that framework. A lot of people argue in favor of Trump by saying there were no new wars and we had peace, world peace, Trump says. And here's Destiny's response.
Point, it's easy to think that something is good because you look at only the surface level things. You go, oh, well, there were no new wars, so it must have been great. People say peace in the Middle East and forget that Iran attacked Saudi Arabia proper for the first time in all of history. Donald Trump did nothing. The entire Great March of Return, the border riots raged on. Yeah, that's great. That's not peace in the Middle East. The entire border riots raged on 2018, 2019 in Palestine and in Israel. Donald Trump did absolutely nothing. The idea that there was peace in the Middle East here when the region was about to boil over, and it finally did on October 7th, is just laughable. It shows like a total misunderstanding of anything that's happened in the Middle East. What was the peace? Is it the ongoing civil war in Yemen? Was it the ongoing civil war in Syria? Was it the ongoing destabilization in Iraq? Was it the ongoing protests in the Gaza Strip? Like, it's a joke to me. But
on that point of full agreement between,
and that's where it wraps up. But yeah, we've gone through as well, both with, or especially I should say, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, how this idea that we had, which when I say it, why would we have to intellectually push back against this? But I guess you do. That we had a world peace under Trump is fact check false. And if you understand that, as Kamala Harris put it so nicely. We were just talking about this earlier. You didn't fall out of a coconut tree, and you come within the context that came before you, whatever. And it's true. It's true. That there are things that lead up to things, to put it very simply. And in the case of some of these now I need to really change my mood as I get back into something very serious. When it comes to wars beginning or conflicts erupting, to be honest, you do have to sort of follow the thread of how did we get here. And pretending like everything was good and solved and then somehow spun out of control under Biden is a little bit ridiculous, especially when you dive into, like I said, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the conflict that was ongoing that led up to the full-scale invasion. And so Trump just willy-nilly saying that he prevented Russia from invading and they never would have under him is not compelling to me. One more moment.
Dr. Mark, always great to have your contribution. Thank you very much indeed. Destiny, you were chuckling there. What were you chuckling about?
The idea that a Republican would demand a full physical assessment from a president when they wouldn't even demand Trump's taxes is hilarious to me. The idea of not being able to answer the call in the middle of the night, I mean, it's already happened. We've had it with Ukraine. We've had it with Israel. Like Donald Trump did not show leadership when Iran attacked Saudi Arabia and he stood by and did nothing. He didn't show leadership when he abandoned our Kurdish allies in Syria for absolutely no reason. Biden has shown leadership, whether you like it or not, whether you like how he's dealt with it or not. He has shown leadership and the ability to bring allies together for Ukraine. He has shown leadership and the ability to force Israel to simultaneously show restraint while still remaining faithful as an ally. So, I mean, like, we can make fun of a debate performance all you want, but we can compare the legislative records of both presidents and we can compare their actions in office.
You can, but here's the problem. You can, but here's the problem with that, is that it's just not cutting through. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and interestingly, him saying it's not cutting through, that's true. It's not cutting through often. We've gone through the efficacy of governance on the part of the Biden administration and how a lot of Americans don't see that, which has been a big thesis of this show. But unfortunately, perception-related things like what we've seen in the aftermath of the debate do really sway people. And in part for good reason, because we do care about how you're coming off, because that can be indicative of you, but also sometimes it does get overplayed. And then my message that I do want to bring to all of you, sort of in the pro-democracy group, we have our anti-Trump Republicans, people sort of independents, people on the left, all of us with policy differences, understanding the importance of defeating Trump and preventing that constitutional democratic crisis. I will say, based on what I've seen online and sort of people's debates about this, let's respect each other in this unsettling moment. Because I'm seeing there are two sides forming even within our pro-democracy side, which people who say Biden should absolutely drop out and anyone who thinks otherwise is insane. And the people who say Biden should not drop out and anyone suggesting he should is insane. And people are jumping down each other's throats. Just remember, we all, either side you follow if you're sort of not sure, we all are on the same pro-democracy team here, wanting the best. And everyone's coming at that in good faith. So in our discussions, and I understand why a lot of rage can come out, because it is troubling even having to have this conversation. But again, I think compassion for each other's views is an important thing here. And as we watch, I'm sort of still watching the post-debate fallout unfold. And I think it's important that preemptively a ripcord is not pulled because of the uncertainty that comes along with that. But if it gets there and Biden deems it necessary not to be the nominee, then we obviously have that conversation. But in the meantime, while people are advocating on behalf of either position, I would just say do so respectfully, because that's ripping each other's threads just serves MAGA and serves the candidacy of Trump, and that's not what we want. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. If you want to get the extra episode of the show I referenced earlier, you can do so by clicking the join button below.